So let's rock and roll. Did you start recording?
Yes.
Okay. How do I get out of this? Okay.
Where are you right now?
I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay, there we go. So here's some information. So most of you know me because you've probably got the invite from me. I am a realtor and a business coach. I live bicontinentally. I grew up in Europe. My mom is from Finland. My dad is East African, and I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden. I visited over 50 countries in 5 continents, and I live in Barcelona and Atlanta. So I'm a passionate traveler, and of course, I believe in really exploring and seeing everything that's out there. But more importantly, I want to retire somewhere warm,
Mhm,
somewhere I know I have good health care and I don't have to pay out of pocket crazy,
mhm.
and somewhere where I have some healthy foods because we know that is an issue in the United States, right? And really just somewhere on a beach with some palm trees and some good cocktails. So I've been starting to look at a lot of opportunities and figure things out. My situation is a little bit different than many of you or your clients because I do have a European passport that just opened up a ton of countries that I can move to. But after visiting and spending 4 weeks in Southeast Asia, Europe is not looking as attractive to me anymore. Now I'm kind of considering that maybe Asia is a better option for me as far as cost and as far as just lifestyle versus being in Europe. So that's a little bit about me. Valerie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Perfect. I'm just putting my cell phone number in the chat, just to feel free to text, call, whatever you need, WhatsApp. Um, there we go. So speaking about the food here in America, often people look at this picture and they're just like, "Is that you?" And yes, we have been through a pandemic and we are in the land of unhealthy food. So I'm a little bit plumper, but I'm working on it. Judge me later. So yes, this is me. I'm Valerie. I have a JD, a postdoctorate in tax, and I'm also certified in investment migration. As Natalie was saying, right now, she's lived, bicontinentally, but as you know, in the United States, we have a very low percentage of people who even have passports. The last I checked, it was still hovering around 30%. But of course, after the pandemic and now with our cell phones and the world being in the palm of our hands, Americans are not just traveling more and wider outside of the Caribbean and Mexico on their vacations. They're really interested in going to really other parts of the world and then coming back and saying, it's much better over there, right? So that's where my industry kind of comes into play. Also, with the pandemic, as well as with the changing political climate here in the United States, we always see an influx of Americans that are interested in this industry. And it's been a little bit challenging with Americans because we've been born and bred to believe, why would we ever live anywhere else in the world but America? But that mindset is changing. And I'm a structured finance and tax attorney by trade. So I often speak to clients about looking at their citizenship diversification as another prong in their asset portfolio, right? When you look at wealth management, you've got trust and estate lawyers, which is me, financial advisors, investment advisors, all kinds of people, and citizenship advisors are the next prong in that wheel. So that's my shtick. That's what I'm here to talk about, and really looking forward to a robust discussion.
Awesome. And I realized when I had my first conversation with Valerie that I didn't know nothing about all these other things, right? So, as I've had these conversations, read through a lot of the material for the company that she works for, it has made me realize that there are so many more opportunities for us, especially real estate agents as well, that's on here. From if you have these conversations and you have your clients that want to diversify their portfolio, you can always send a referral out to another agent in another country and get a referral on that as well. And by the way, as you travel to explore other countries, you set up some meetings with real estate agents there, and now your whole trip is a write off. So, just a little side note of how you should do it so that you can get those tax write-offs as well. So let's talk a little bit about the reasons to why people want to potentially buy overseas or invest in overseas or even look at retirement overseas. Well, one of the biggest factors are definitely cost of living. And cost of living in the United States right now, and we're not even talking about major cities, we're just talking about in general, it's about $5,000 because our cost of living is going up so fast. And the biggest part of our cost of living in the United States is actually housing. And we
Yes.
real estate agents know, 3-4 years ago, you can buy a house in Atlanta for 300,000. Now you're about 450, right? But even rents have gone up tremendously in the last 10 years. And we don't even want to start looking at what does retirement costs look like for me to be in a home, right? Because I don't want my kids to have to be a bother to them and take care of me. But I have friends right now that they're paying $5,000 a month for their mom to be in a retirement home, right?
Yeah.
That's getting some help. So as we're talking about all of those kind of things, cost of living is a biggest factor for many people as they're planning for the future. So just looking at this draft that I put on there. So like in United States, it's about $5,000 a month, all right, a monthly cost. Portugal is about 2,200. Panama, which is I call it the sleeper. Me and Valerie just talked about Panama. And if you haven't been to Panama, Panama City, you should go check it out. It's $1,800 a month. And then Thailand is about $1,500 a month. This is the thing. As we retire, we probably will have the same fixed income, right? So we'll have the same, no worries, we'll have the same income. So are you going to stay somewhere and have to be like potentially like some of these people that we see having to go to Walmart and be greeters because they can't afford their medicine or can't? Or do you want to sit on the beach somewhere because you've set up your lifestyle in a way that it makes sense? So that's the second part, lifestyle, right? Access to vibrant cultures, favorable climates, diverse cuisine, healthy foods, those are all parts of why people are looking to retire or buy overseas or do what I do, which is live bicontinentally, if you have that opportunity. Then the people are looking for secondary passport. We talked about that, and Valerie probably touch on that. They call it the plan B, right? Right. Well, if things don't go well here, we're like, this is my plan. So having a second passport opens up the world for you to be able to go and live there if you want to, or live in the United States if you want to, if you have an American passport. Me, myself, I have a European passport and a green card. So there's a lot of opportunities there as well. Some tax advantages. There are huge tax advantages in some countries. Panama is one of them. Valerie, make sure that you talk about that client with the wine company. That is a
Yes.
good example for that Panama situation. And Portugal also have offered some tax-friendly programs for expats as well. And then the one that we don't really want to talk about because we know like it's so expensive. Like I pay $450 a month to have high risk deductible healthcare insurance because I'm self-employed. And I only pay $60 a month for private insurance in Barcelona. And that $60 allows me, when I have a medicine that's needed, it's literally $5 or less. And I can go to any doctor I need to. But I go to the doctor here and they put me on medicine. I remember last time it was $98. And I was like, wait, that's my deductible? They're like, yeah, the medicine is actually 500 and some dollars. And I was like, what? Crazy. So healthcare is another reason. Countries like Spain and Thailand have really top-rated healthcare systems, as well as Turkey, and it's at the fraction of U.S. cost.
Yep.
Okay. Considerations when choosing a country. Now, going and visiting a country and having a blast and kicking it with your friends does not mean that's the country you want to move into or move to or relocate to, because countries have different things behind the scenes. So if you stay at an all-inclusive resort, you're not really getting the heartbeat of the country. You don't really know what's going on. So here are some things that you should consider if you're considering moving to a country in the future, or wanting to move now, or buying and investing with a potential of plan B that if you later need to move, you can. Visa and residency is probably the top one for that. What does the country offer as far as retirement or investment visas? Your cost of living over there to make sure that you're going to be living affordably for your budget that you want to set aside based on your retirement income. Healthcare, access to quality healthcare for retirees. What does that look like? Your language and culture. I have some friends and, they go to another country and if it's not in English, they don't like it. And so you have to keep that in mind. Like if you're not willing to learn a new language, move into a country that might not have a lot of English speaking, period. Like I live in Barcelona and I should already know Spanish. I've lived there for a year, but everybody in Barcelona speaks English. So nobody, as soon as I try to practice, they just switch over to English. So I'm not even getting to practice. So for somebody like that, knowing and understanding, am I comfortable learning a new language or not? And if the answer is no, then you have to look at places that you don't have to learn the language to be able to live there and be part of their society and the culture, right? Then the other part is the stability. Now, I'm not going to mention a couple of countries that a lot of people are investing in right now. Me, myself, I would never invest in those because I don't believe that the economic conditions in those countries, not to mention them, are going to be something that I feel comfortable putting my money in. Also research the political statuses and what's behind the scenes on politics. Like some countries are still, there's some mafia type, cartel type of stuff behind the scenes. Yeah, you might be able to get a house for almost nothing, but the political factor in that country might not be safe. It might be okay now, but 5 years from now, it might not be. So you have to really look at the stability of the country. Then look at taxes and understand that there is something called double taxation. United States don't care where you are. If you are a citizen of United States, you are going to have to claim taxes somehow. Now, there's write-offs on it, if you've already paid for another country, etc. But you want to make sure you understand all the local tax rules and the taxation requirements. As a matter of fact, Valerie's background is in tax. So if you ever decide to have a conversation with her, she actually understands that factor as well, very, very much. How easy is it to visit family or travel? I originally wanted to buy, and I'm using myself as an example. I originally wanted to buy something in Costa Rica, things like that, because my kids, who are 22 and 27, will live in the United States. Because I wanted to make sure that when they decided to have kids, I wouldn't be that far away. I could just pop 3-4 hours up to Atlanta or wherever they are in the United States and get to them. Well, they moved to Sweden in 2020. There's a reason I moved to Europe. I'm now 3 hours away from my kids who live in Stockholm, Sweden, that if there's something I need to get to, I can pop to them or my mother in 3 hours. And my round trip ticket last minute is no more than $100 to get from Barcelona, Spain to Sweden, right? So you have to think about what's important to you. Do you have to come back to your city that you are in Atlanta, or is your whole family moving to wherever you're moving to? And then the last one that I always tell people, does it fit your lifestyle? A lot of times you hear people talking about, oh, Costa Rica is so beautiful, it's so great. If you're not an outdoorsy person, it doesn't matter if that's all the outdoorsy things to do and the jungle and your zip lining. If you don't like that stuff, that's not a place for you, right? Unless you go to the city, well, is that the kind of life that you want? So you really have to figure out, does it fit your lifestyle? Don't just go with, oh, this is great. If you're a beach bum, you want to make sure you find a country or a city that's on the water, right? Because that's going to make sense for you. So really think about what your lifestyle is like, and then make sure that you're looking at those options. The next part that is not the great fun culture thing you want to do is the financial consideration, right? Everything in making decisions is going to come down to money. Because if we had money left and right and there was unlimited amount of money, we probably would have already pulled the trigger and bought in multiple places, right? So you have to really make sure you plan budget and plan for your housing, your healthcare, travel, and emergencies. So here's an example. Costa Rica comfortable retirement lifestyle costs around $2,500 a month or so. You have to make sure that you understand that there is something called currency exchange. When we travel and we go to a country and we just go for a couple of days or a week, exchanging $1,000, even if the currency exchange is not great, it's not going to hit you hard. But if you start transferring big amounts of money, the currency exchange rate is going to count and matter. I have some friends of mine that do get money from their investment properties. They live in Barcelona, they're American, and they're living there full time right now. But they have investments in the United States where they're getting money in from their real estate rentals and things. So there's actually a bank called Wise that they use. So I just put it out there in case you already go to a country a lot. And that's a way to kind of have money in their currency, and you can put it in there. And it's not a situation where when you are getting to use it, you have to go and make a currency exchange. You can actually have it in multiple currencies for different countries if you're consistently going back and forth. So that's one thing that you definitely want to kind of keep in mind. Right now, like I know the dollar is super strong to the Swedish kroner. They are struggling economically right now. So I've already moved some money into my Swedish bank account so that if things change, I got some extra cash sitting there. So when I go home and visit my family, or I got to buy something for the kids, I took advantage of the fact that the currency exchange is very strong for the dollar now, and I transferred money into that account. Taxes. Uncle Sam is always there with a handout. We all know that. You have to understand the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. the foreign bank financial accounts reporting for the US citizen, and make sure you're doing some estate planning, not just with your estate planner here. Understand that the country you're going to, what does that look like? I found out through the hard way from a friend of mine that mom passed away in Spain. She's Swedish. That as soon as that happened and they got the inheritance, there was an inheritance tax that was due right away. Not like United States when you get ready to sell the property. They had to come up with all that money up front to keep the property. So you want to make sure you understand if something happens to me, what does that look like for the people that are going to actually inherit my property, right? So all of those things you want to make sure you take a look at.
I am so listen, and you just went on mute, Natalie. I'm just listen, I was kind of dancing like this in my seat because the FBAR and FACTA and T&E planning is my wheelhouse. That's my bread and butter. So when you put that in there, I'm like, oh my gosh, because oftentimes people don't know those things, right? And they're super important when you're dealing with the IRS here in the United States. They want to know everything you do around the world, and most people don't know that, and it's understandable why you wouldn't think that, but they will let you know, and the way they let you know things is not always so kind. So I'm glad you put that in there.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to have those conversations up front before you make a decision to pull the trigger in a country, right? So you have total clarity on what it's going to look like. Now, with that being said, things might change in those countries.
Yes.
And so you have to consistently stay abreast of what's happening in that country, all their laws that are changing. Spain is changing every law that there is right now, or they're pushing for it because they want to stop the migration for people coming into Spain because there's been some issues with affordability there. And so if you have a property there already, or if you're in the process of buying a property, that can actually affect you. So always make sure you stay on top of it. So the thing that I love about when you're considering moving somewhere is you kind of have to do some research and plan for it. Well, the first part is if you're considering going to a country or moving to a place or buying somewhere, you have to go and visit it, right? I always say go visit a place right away if you've been thinking about it. And then if you're really getting serious about it, go for a longer period of time. A weekend trip is not going to tell you or show you. And don't stay in a hotel. Go stay in an Airbnb or rental property where the locals are. Start going to the local markets. Start having conversations with people. Start asking, expats that might be in the area to talk to them about what their experiences have been like. And then consult with an investment migration specialist such as Valerie, immigration lawyers or tax advisors, that if I would decided to move to this place, what does this look like? What are my opportunities? Because there are different ways that you can get residency or citizenships, right? By investment, by naturalization, and we'll talk a little bit more about those, but you want to make sure that your situation will fit for the place you're trying to go into, because it's not one size fit all. It all depends on your situation, how much money you got, how much retirement you have coming in, when you're retiring, etc. Definitely engage with expat communities for real life insights. There's a ton of Facebook pages for if you're considering moving to, let's say, to Panama, for example. You can probably go on Facebook and say expats in Panama, join that group and start asking questions. Now, let me tell you something. Some of those groups are really, really mean, just like Facebook is. People hide behind, the keyboard. And also double check anything that people are telling you, because I'm in some of those groups for Spain and I see people giving wrong information all the time.
All
But
the
it's a
time.
great place to just ask her, like, hey, what cities do you like? If I like this type of lifestyle, what cities would you recommend? Because normally we might not know about some of the smaller cities. Like Spain, everybody knows about Madrid, Valencia, they know about Barcelona, right? But nobody knows about Mataro. They might not know about Badalona, right? And some of the smaller coastal towns where cost of living is less, but you still have easy access to it. So having and engaging with some expat communities is a great way to get more information. Understand property laws and local regulations, and then make sure you create a timeline for your research, travel, and your relocation. When you're doing that timeline, the other thing you need to take into account is reading up and finding out, are there changes that's happening in that country in terms of you having that opportunity? I have two friends, actually, as a matter of fact, I think she might be on here. Yep, sure is. There they are. Hey, guys. that were looking at Spain. And the
Mm.
laws and rules in Spain changed so fast that it did not make sense. I see you, Ruth. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And so now it's like they have to make a different pivot a different way and look at some other opportunities. Right. So it's important that as you pick a country, you're consistently seeing what's happening. So you don't just put all your eggs in one basket. Because if something changes and that opportunity is gone, what's your other opportunity at that point? Right.
Mhm.
Um, so pathways to second residencies that I kind of mentioned earlier, and um, she's going to cover the residency by investment, citizenship by investment. But one of those ways is definitely buying property in another country, right? Naturalization is also another one. That one takes much longer because normally you have to live in that country for X amount of years to be able to then get citizenship, right? Then you have retirement visas. Like Panama has a great retirement visa that not only are they trying to promote Americans to move to Panama, they literally will get discounts on, like, I have some friends that move down there on utilities. They get
Yeah.
discounts on healthcare. They get discounts on travel. And so financially, moving to Panama as a retiree makes total sense. Thailand's
Mhm.
retirement visa requires a proof of 25,000 in annual income. I mean, that kind of could be like just Social Security right there. It's not a lot of money, right? And then digital nomad visas are also something that a lot of countries have for somebody that wants to just go and live on the road for a little bit and just kind of experience different countries. So these are some pathways to getting second residencies or second citizenships, or both, a combination of that. You start with a residency and then you switch over. So here's some top destinations for retirees, and that's not just through investment, it's also through real estate or naturalization. Portugal has been up there in the top for a very long time, and so has Spain when it comes to Europe. Spain is starting to drop off because right now, just so you know, not only are some of the other rules being changed, they're trying to implement that if a foreigner buys a property in Spain, they're going to have to pay 100% tax.
Yep.
Means if that property is $200,000, you will pay $200,000 in tax. So you just had to pay double for that same property that a European citizen just has to pay 200 for it. Okay, so that's making Spain not even look like a great option for a lot of people right now. Latin America, a lot of people are paying in Mexico because of low cost of living, proximity to the United States, and the ease of being able to get residency there as well. Costa Rica, the Pura Vida lifestyle, excellent retirement incentives. And if you love to be outside, the weather, all that stuff, it's a great option. Me and Valerie both think Panama, out of all of those, have are some of the best ones. It feels like Miami. If you haven't been there, me and Allison had the pleasure of being there a couple of years ago, and we really, really enjoyed our time there. It was like Miami slash San Juan on the old town. The food was great. The people were awesome. And they have huge, great incentives there as well. In Asia, Thailand, and Malaysia are great, affordable luxury and thriving expat communities. They have great visa programs for long-term residencies. I have about 4 or 5 friends that actually have retired or moved to Thailand from Sweden, and they love it over there. And then in Caribbean, you have a lot of different Caribbean countries, and she's actually going to cover those because some of them have changed recently. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. That's a lot of information that I kind of tossed at you. You guys are super knowledgeable. You probably already know a lot of this stuff, but I want to take a moment to just ask any ahas that you may have had and share that just so that we can kind of recap what we talked about, and then any questions you might have currently on the information I just covered.
There's a question from Jerry.
I see
Perfect.
it. Is there a reliable source to stay current on the changes happening around the world? I'm going to place it in the chat, but there is IMI Daily, and it is so in our industry, IMI Daily is kind of like a daily um newsletter that we can read every day that gives us up to the minute changes in programs. So when Natalie was talking about how Spain is going to institute 100% tax, literally that just came down the wire this week. literally. And we found out about it on IMI Daily. Now, sidebar, that sounds very scary, and it can be, but if you're dealing with high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, the good thing about it is that they could use that 100% tax as a deduction here in the United States, right? So when we talk about double taxation, as Natalie mentioned before, it's a misnomer. It's not really double taxation, but that's what people call it. It's more of making sure that people don't forum shop in with taxes to live other places in the world. So the United States and the treaties that it has with other countries just make sure that wherever you live, you're paying the equivalent amount of taxes in both locations. So clearly, if you're paying 100% tax on an asset in Spain, you probably were not going to pay that much in taxes here in the United States. But you know, the ultra high net worth individuals pay a lot in taxes, but they will welcome that as a deduction on their US taxes, right? So for them, it could be beneficial. So although it sounds like bad news, if you think through it and with the clients that you have access to, that's how you can kind of, if they're interested in Spain, you could say, yes, but you're going to get a 500,000 or whatever you pay for your home. You're going to get that as a deduction on your US taxes, and anything that is an overage you could carry forward, right? So there is some benefit, but only for those who can afford the benefit, if that makes sense. Um, but yes, that's a long-winded way of saying IMI Daily is where you can stay current on what's happening in this industry.
DJ, that's a great question. Thank you for that one. Are there any other ahas or questions before we move over to a lot of the information that Valeria will cover? All right. All right. Start with the Caribbean. All that snow we just got. Look, let's go somewhere warm.
Exactly, exactly. So when we think about the Caribbean, especially for U.S. investors, it's it kind of goes both ways. And what I mean by that is that most of the time Americans will vacation in the Caribbean, right? Which is fine. They may or may not want to relocate in the Caribbean. Many of them want to relocate to Europe. However, this is the great thing about the Caribbean. I always reference the pandemic. So when we were going through the pandemic here in the United States, we were grounded. We were not allowed to fly out of the country. However, if you had a Caribbean passport, you could still fly around the world because the Caribbean was the least affected by the pandemic. They weren't shut out from the world. So when some of our high net worth clients understood that and they saw that some of their I guess their comrades were able to fly around the world because they had another passport, they started looking into the Caribbean. Some of them even wrapped in the Caribbean with a European passport as well. So they were doing two passports at once. So the Caribbean is great. Antigua and Barbuda and Grenada, as we'll see, they, of course, beautiful, beautiful islands. And the investment for all of these islands is going to be two options. It's either going to be a donation to the country. The donation is earmarked for the development funds. Those development funds for those countries go directly to upgrading roads, hospitals, putting money into the school system. So it's all for the infrastructure of that country, right? Also, though, you can purchase real estate. And the real estate is their government approved projects. What that means is that the government has vetted the real estate developers or the projects to make sure that everything is kind of up to snuff. Because this is actually a transaction, right? So if the countries don't put out great products for investors to invest in, then they're going to lose business. So that's why you see in St. Kitts and Nevis, for instance, that there are, you know, a lot of properties by Sotheby's and the Four Seasons and things of that nature. Antigua and Barbuda, they have very high-end resorts as well. I believe the Park Hyatt is there and other places. And so the Caribbean is a really, really, really great place to look into. Also, if you all have clients similar to Natalie that may have green card status here in the United States, right? There are always pockets of wealthy immigrants all throughout the country, and I know they're in Atlanta big time. I've got a client right now who he talks to me as a representative of 10 Indian families out of Dallas, and they're all looking at getting passports to Grenada because the United States and Grenada have an E2 visa relationship. So if you have citizenship in Grenada, you can get an E2 visa to the United States, which puts you on a quicker path to citizenship in the United States. So also just look at your clients that may come from other countries and may not have citizenship here. That's a really great opportunity to talk to them about getting citizenship in another country that may have a stronger passport for them, right? A lot of my Indian clients who have Indian passports, they want stronger passports, right? India and China, especially. China doesn't allow dual citizenship, and neither does India. But, they want to be able to travel the world visa free like we do here in the United States, but their passports don't allow it. And when you don't have visa free travel, it is a hassle, right? Before you go to a country, you can't just pick up and go on the weekend like we can. You actually have to plan for it because you've got to submit paperwork to be allowed entry into the country. So I often find that the Americans that are investing more in the Caribbean are generally Americans that have either dual citizenship with, not necessarily the United States, but perhaps and another country, and they're looking for family members or friends to obtain stronger passports. So this is kind of the same information with Antigua and Barbuda, and we're going to send you this information so you don't have to necessarily take notes on these specific things for these islands because we're going to give all of this to you. But it's kind of an overview, even though Antigua and Barbuda is what we're looking at right now. I'm just giving you an overview of the Caribbean. And so there are 5 Caribbean countries that operate citizenship by investment programs. There are no Caribbean countries that do residence visas. So they all do citizenship. So it's Antigua and Barbuda, it's Grenada, it's Dominica, it is St. Lucia, and St. Kitts and Nevis. The interesting thing also about investment migration is that you can load up your application with as many family members and immediate family members, right? Not cousins and people of that nature, but you can load up your application with as many immediate family members, all for one investment. I have a client right now for Portugal. There are 10 people on his application because he's a blended family. So he has him and his wife, they both have their kids and they're also adding in their parents, all for one investment. So that's the beautiful thing. It's not every person has to make the investment in order to get the citizenship or the residence visa. It's that one investment can cover as many eligible people as possible. Eligible, however, is the key word, and that's why you would probably want to call me or another specialist in this arena because we know for each country what would make someone eligible. You would think, oh, well, this is my daughter, but for instance, Natalie, your children would not be eligible to be on your application for the Portugal Golden Visa because of their age, right? But people might think, oh, well, I could join my kids. Each country is different. However, Natalie, if you were applying for citizenship in the Caribbean, they could because the Caribbean has different age limits. So there are nuances to the programs, but they're not minor. They may seem minor, but they make a big difference because financially you have to figure out, am I going to submit applications, individual applications for those that may not be able to be attached to mine, all kinds of considerations. But I think we could go through and look at each slide, but I think giving an overview for the Caribbean and then knowing that you're going to get this information more specifically, here's the E2 visa information. I think that's probably going to be more helpful because it'll just start to get redundant. Malta is interesting because Malta has a residence as well as a citizenship program. For US-based clients for Malta, I strongly promote the citizenship program because where Malta is located geographically, unless you have a reason to actually want to live there, um, it's not helpful, right? It's different having a residence visa in inland Europe as opposed to having a residence visa in an island off the coast of Italy where you would have to get back to Italy or travel by boat even to France or something to get inland, right? But I do have a client who has a residence visa there because he's an archaeologist and he is going to be living in Malta, right? However, the citizenship, it can give you access, unfettered access to all of Europe. So for our US based clients, Malta, the citizenship route is more appealing. Ironically, for our Asian clients, those from China, having the residence visa is what they gravitate towards so much in Malta. Malta has an excellent educational system. And because China does not allow dual citizenship, they much prefer and are happy with the residence visa, and they figure out how to get to other places in Europe if they need to. But it makes sense, for them. There's a reason why Malta is appealing to our clients from China specifically. They really love the residence visa for China and educating their children and everything. So, yes.
And one of the things that when we spoke about Malta, it's on my list. I need to go and visit there. But
Mhm.
this is definitely, if you ever want to speak about Malta to your clients or you've been thinking about it, this is really for high net worth individuals. The
Right.
minimum
100%.
investment is probably one of the highest in Europe, period.
Yeah.
So, uh, every person or even anybody on this call right now that might have a desire to look at these opportunities, everybody's situation is going to be so different just off
Mhm.
of, your investment opportunities that you have. What does your passport look like? Do you have a European passport or not? What is your tax things that you're looking at? Are you trying to get your parents to get a citizenship? Thankfully, my kids have European passports and American passports. So whatever move I make, they can do their own because they have access to those as well. But you might not have that. So all of it is as we're kind of walking through these different countries,
Mhm.
and you see the detail when Valerie and I send the information for you to really dig deeper. If you are considering some of these countries, I think the first call definitely is to Valerie. And it's kind of like when we work, there's a lot of real estate agents here. When we work with our clients, we don't just go, oh, this is the perfect house for you. We do a buyer consultation, right? So it's kind of the same thing what Valerie does with her clients for the company she works for is doing a consultation. Well, based on what you have and where you fall, these are your opportunities. Now, I know you said you wanted to go to this country, but you don't have 600,000. That might not work for you, but here's another workaround of how you might be able to get there, right? So I just
Mhm.
wanted to kind of pinpoint that out.
Yes, exactly. No, that's very true. And also to your point, the more money that you move internationally, when our clients are investing in the Caribbean is marked to the dollar, so they're able to invest and pay everything with US dollars, no problem. But for our clients that are interested in Europe, they have to pay my company and all the fees and everything in euros. And so when you're converting 500,000, a million, 3 and 5 million or more, you also have to consider what that conversion rate is going to look like. So again, it's I don't want to say it's an easier sell, but for lack of a better phrase, it's an easier sell with high net worth individuals because it's not going to hurt their pockets as much. And let me just say this really quickly before we get there. Oh, well, let me just say this about St. Kitts and Nevis because there's just another nuance that makes St. Kitts and Nevis different from the other Caribbean countries is that St. Kitts and Nevis recently, one thing is they dropped their real estate investment from 400,000 to 325. But St. Kitts and Nevis is also the only island that will allow you to purchase a private home. The other islands, you have to go through and buy a condo at the Four Seasons or, a Sotheby's property or something like that. Um, but St. Kitts and Nevis will allow you to do that or alternatively invest in a private home. So that's something that's very interesting for families that are looking to relocate. I have a Jewish couple now that are choosing between St. Kitts and Nevis and Panama because they need the ability to buy their own private home because their child has special needs and the real estate developments are not large enough for that child's needs and what they need to do. And so they've narrowed it down to those two. They're visiting Panama. They're actually in Panama now and will be visiting St. Kitts and Nevis, I think, sometime next month to just determine which one works out for them. And also, to Natalie's point, figuring out what's going on in the country, I was able to find out for them that there's a large Jewish community in Panama. So that was very intriguing to them because they keep kosher and they have Shabbat. And so being among their community was really important. I didn't find out the same for St. Kitts and Nevis. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but those are like the little things that can sway a client from one place to another that's really important for them to know that they might not necessarily find out on their own. But if we could, the Caribbean is basically all the same. It's two investment options. It's either a donation or it's real estate. Now we're getting into Greece. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the same overview for Europe that I did for the Caribbean, and I'm going to point out all of the differences. One thing that is really important, and I'm glad again, JD or DJ, that you asked the question that you asked, because like I said, Spain just announced the 100% tax, but also 2 years ago on a Wednesday in July, I forget the date exactly, we got word that the Caribbean was increasing its prices effective immediately. We literally were working on, getting applications and everything submitted, and the prices changed. And so we had to go back to our clients we had not yet submitted and consult with them to see if that's what they wanted to do. Same thing happened with Greece. Greece started at 250,000 for real estate and 500,000. This past summer, Greece said, we're going to be so popular. Yesterday's price is not today's price. We're going up to 400,000. It ain't 100,000, right? Now, Greece does have a carve out for 250 that I could get into. Basically, for 250,000, you can buy into a renovated commercial space. So that's great that that option is there. But my point is that yesterday's price is not today's price. And so what we know with American clients is that because our passports are so strong, because we come from a country that we've been socialized to believe is the best place in the world, even though we know differently, we don't really have people that often that think about moving abroad or diversifying their citizenship, even if they don't want to relocate, just diversifying their citizenship. And so they give it some time, they think about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But to our common friend, he could have got in at Portugal 3 years ago at 280,000 on a guaranteed buyback after 5 years. So for the cost of our fees and the government fees, he would have had a residence visa and citizenship for no money because it's a guaranteed buyback. That 280 of a few years ago is now 500,000, right? And so it's the same. You can invest and get the guaranteed buyback, but that's $220,000 more that you've got to cough up, to make that same move. And so I don't like to pressure people, but I do like to make them aware that prices change all the time. And these countries started these programs, just as a point of reference, after 2008. It was their version of a buyout or a bailout, I should say, and they're doing really well. But the more popular they become, the more expensive they're going to become because they can, right? So Greece is great. It's only a residence visa, same as Italy and same for Spain. And the reason why is that, as Natalie said before, in order for you to even be eligible for citizenship in Greece and in Italy, you have to live there 183 days a year, which is 6 months, 6 months and a day, for 7 years. In Spain, you've got to do that for 10 years. And it's just logistically infeasible for so many people. So we just promote the residence visas because it's the easier path, right? None of them have any physical presence requirement. You're not bound to live there at all. But if your clients are thinking about relocating, then citizenship is an option for them, but it's very rare that clients are going to live somewhere and change their tax home and do that for 7 or 10 years. So Greece, again, Italy and Spain are residence programs that we promote. Italy and Portugal have great retirement visas. They don't require investment. Similar to what Natalie said, you just have to prove that you have a fixed income, right? And so they want to see that you're getting your Social Security. They don't want to see that you get rental income, because what happens if you don't get that income anymore, right? Because if they allow you to retire there, they don't want you to be a ward of the state. You've got to have like your own money and things of that nature. Um, we could go forward.
And
Uh,
let me also add that when you're talking about, I don't know if you, some of you understand, but the European Schengen and then 29 countries, that's basically visa
yes.
travel. But let me also add like Greece and Sweden and a lot of the European countries that are part of European Union, they actually have access to like almost 180 different countries they can travel to without a passport. I just traveled to 5 countries in Southeast Asia and I did not need visas to any of them except one, which was Cambodia. And it was the most random thing because they told me I didn't need it. So then when I got there, they were like, oh, it's $30. And I was like, okay, well, let me just pay you 30 and walk in, right? It was kind of like that. So
Mhm.
the other thing too is if you are wanting to have a desire to move to Europe and you're like, I'm actually moving, then going to a place like Greece where you only have to live there, what is it, 5 years, Valerie, to
You
get a
got to live there for 7 years, 6 months and a day every year for 7 years. Yeah, if you're moving, Greece
if
is
you're moving. And then
great.
after that, once you have a European passport, it opens up going to almost any other European schlagen country and moving over there easily without having to do anything else.
That's
That's
the
like,
biggest, yes, that's the biggest draw. And you're European, so you pronounce it what, Schlagen? Look,
yeah.
Americans say Schengen. So I've never heard it pronounced that way. I'm gonna just say Schengen because I know I'm
It's Swedish. I know. I'm
yeah,
going
no,
to
I think that's great. But the Schengen region is the golden ticket. There's no other region in the world like it. It's borderless region. I will tell you, other continents, other countries on other continents are trying to figure it out. I do know for a fact that Rwanda is trying to figure it out, but their neighboring countries are not yet I guess at the same level. What Rwanda has done in 20 years is amazing. But right now, Europe is the only continent that has this borderless region where if you have citizenship to one country, you basically have citizenship to all 29. It's fantastic. So someone could have a Portuguese citizenship but live in Spain. And then if they don't like Spain, they could go to France. And if they don't like France, they can go to Italy. No one cares, no one bothers you because you're a Schengen citizen and it's phenomenal. So yes, that's the biggest thing with Europe for sure. Panama is my love. And the reason why is
we don't,
because, yeah, the reason why is because, most people don't really think about Panama. Now, I know Housewives of Atlanta or Potomac was just in Panama. So I was like, so many people are going to start going there now, which is fine. But you know what I'm saying? And they tore it up too. I'm just like, ladies, y'all can't act right for nothing. Nevertheless, um, Panama is so dope, though. I mean, first of all, Panama is one of the world's financial centers, right? So we've got New York, we've got Hong Kong, we've got London, we've got Mauritius, we've got Panama. Panama is financially independent. They're not beholden to anybody. No matter what Trump says about Panama, he is wrong. They don't need the US for not a damn thing. They don't, right? And for lifestyle, it gives you everything that you want. Like the beach is beautiful. Panama City is like Miami, like Natalie said. And it's very, very modern and contemporary, but nobody talks about Panama. So I have a colleague who had an Israeli client and he wanted to be able to distribute his wines throughout the Americas, right? So North, Central, and South. So she encouraged him to get a Panamanian residence visa because here's the thing, in Panama, if your company doesn't earn any money within Panama, you don't pay any taxes, no corporate taxes. All of his money was being generated outside of Panama. People were buying his wines in the United States. They were buying his wines, in Uruguay or wherever, but they weren't buying any wines. He was just using Panama as a distribution center. So he was making all types of money and not having to pay any taxes in Panama to where he situated his distribution center. I think Panama, I gave a global webinar on Panama about a year or so ago, and specifically for clients situated on the continent, because a lot of Nigerians, South Africans, they think that in order to get to the West, they've got to come through Canada or the United States. Both of those things by investment are going to cost you a lot of money. The United States has its investment program too. It's called the EB-5. For $800,000, you can get a visa in the United States that'll put you on the path to citizenship, right? But once I started talking to my Nigerian clients and other clients from different parts of the continent and explaining to them the benefits of Panama, that cut out the US and Canada, and I was happy about it. Why do you have to spend that money? You know what I mean? If you don't have to, right? Because they were looking at Panama from a business perspective, and the benefit was that it gives a great lifestyle as well. So for the United States and several other countries, there is a list. There is a friendly nations visa. And so what Panama does is it says for $200,000, if you are from any of these countries, you can buy a piece of real estate and we'll give you a residence visa. Their other visa option is called a qualified investor visa. That's for all the other countries not on the list, and the price goes to 300,000, and it's a 5-year program. The Friendly Nations is like a 2-year program. You're going to find clients too, again, speaking to those from India and countries with not so strong passports. Panama will give you a passport too, and it's actually stronger than some of those countries. So it's a good idea for you know, various reasons, Panama is just a really, really good idea. It covers and speaks to a lot of varying people's interests. So it's definitely worth looking into for yourselves and for your clients. I mean, Panama is I'm trying to get a residence visa in the Netherlands, and I also would love one in Panama. And so, I love Panama. So yeah, it's a good one. And if it wasn't for the housewives, it would be still a well-kept secret, but what you gonna do? And then we have Portugal. Listen, we all know somebody that's either gone to Portugal, wants to go to Portugal, learned how to spell Portugal recently. You know what I'm saying? Portugal is like on the lips of everybody in the United States. For good reason. Portugal is dope, it is wonderful, it's beautiful. And Portugal is experiencing the same thing that Spain is doing, but Portugal was like, we're not gonna turn away from this money. We just gonna up the price. And whoever can fit in, let them get in. And that's what they did. So with Portugal right now, you can invest in an investment fund. You can also donate money, but that's a donation. You're not going to get it back, and you can't write it off on your U.S. taxes. So most people are going to invest because there is the opportunity to get the return of your principal plus an ROI. Here's a really, really, really big key thing. Portugal allows for U.S. investors to use. Hey, handsome. Oh, look at, hello. Look at that brilliant
Everybody
mind.
squirreled real quick, like,
Right. Look at that brilliant mind. I could tell he is brilliant. But Portugal is allowing investors who have 401ks and IRAs to use those funds for the investment. So the great thing about that is you don't have to take $500,000 out of liquidity, out of circulation in your life. You could use the funds that you already don't touch and use that for the investment for Portugal. And even if you don't have 500,000 in your 401k or IRA, you could supplement the difference in cash. But that's a really, really, really great option. And it allows us to speak to the mass affluent as opposed to strictly the high net worth and ultra high net worth, right? Because now the mass affluent, I have a call right after this at 7 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock your time, with a client on the West Coast. And I talk to people every day about utilizing their 401ks and IRAs because they can, right? Portugal is allowing that, which is great. There
can
is no
I add
real
something
estate
about
investment in
Portugal?
Portugal. Hmm.
Go ahead. I'm going to add something about Portugal after this.
I was just going to say there is no longer a real estate investment in Portugal. So that is off the table. So for you all, there isn't necessarily, a kickback benefit in that way, because it's just not an option for Portugal anymore. But it's still, a good conversation to have with your clients because we do have clients that still are utilizing us to help them find properties, even though it doesn't qualify them for the visa. They just want to have something because they are thinking about relocating or having a permanent vacation home there. So it's not completely out of the conversation.
And I just wanted to add, when I was looking to relocate part-time and start living bicontinentally, Portugal was on my list. I actually went and visited Portugal and I went to the KW office there and had a conversation with the team leader. At that time, they basically shared with me that in Lisbon, um, the last 19 months, 70% of properties were bought by international buyers. That's one of the reasons Portugal started stopping that because what had happened is the cost of properties and real estate went up at such a high rate that the locals couldn't afford to live there anymore.
That's right.
So as these things are happening in different countries, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of knowledge to why countries are changing it, why
Mhm.
Spain is changing it, because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they're taking care of their own people. And if
100%.
they're noticing that it's having an adverse effect on their people, they'll start tweaking things and changing things, right? So for any one of you that has been thinking about, I want to have this opportunity, I guarantee you that in the future, many of these countries that we're talking about, the more people that are moving there and looking to do this process, there's going to be consistently changes and that number is going to continue to go up. So
And here, yeah, and for Panama, for instance, Panama was thinking of changing its prices, its investment thresholds this year, and they decided not to. But here's the thing. even though Panama, the country, did not increase its investment levels, the real estate market increased. So last year, when you could get something at 200,000, which is the base for the friendly nations visa, what you gonna get for 200,000 now in Panama? You don't really want it, right? Because the real estate did go up. So, it's very true. Yesterday's price is not today's price, 100%.
And what Portugal was like, if you visited Portugal four
Not I
years
think
ago,
Valerie really likes Panama. Yes, Nakia, a little bit.
if you visited Portugal 4 or 5 years ago, Portugal is not the same as it was 4 or 5 years ago. Lisbon has changed drastically because of what happened. And like when I was there walking through the city, I just felt like I was in a non-Portugal, like it wasn't Portugal. Like where are the locals? All I saw was people that had moved there from other countries and tourists. And I was like, wait, I don't want this, right? So if you've been somewhere and you're considering making an investment in that and you know there's been a lot of change, go back and visit that because and especially in the Caribbean, because as the storms come through, infrastructures change. Some of us like luxury, some of us like to make sure that we have some safety and some certain kinds of restaurants around now. So you want to make sure that as you're thinking about doing pulling the trigger, you go back and visit prior to.
And the other thing is, you know what? You may not want to live there. Like the same thing has happened in Mexico City, for instance. Mexico City is dope, but now it's really overrun by Americans. It's almost like the American version of the gentrification that has happened throughout the country, pushing, people out of their communities. We're doing in other places in the world. But you may not want to live there, but you may want to buy a property there because the rents are going up. So your ROI on that investment can give you something, and then you go to another country that hasn't yet been Americanized or touched by Americans, like Belize. I don't think Belize has been overrun by Americans yet. You may find another country that you may like to retire to, but keep that investment property in the place that's got higher rents because it makes business sense, just like anything else. Um, Africa. So for many of us have seen in our Instagram and Twitter feeds that there are a lot of black folks trying to go home, right? You know what I'm saying? And of course everybody tries to go to Ghana in December every year, you know what I mean? I get it. I've done it too. But there are people that are really serious about, having that dual citizenship. And I did see a list not too long ago of the countries in Africa offering citizenship to American citizens if they are able to prove their lineage to those particular countries. And then there's no cost, right? Which is really, 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 really nice. Um, so that's something to definitely think about. The continent, I'm sure many of you have been to the continent, but it is so diverse and varied. One city is different than the other. I used to live in Zimbabwe for a while, and I loved it. But, it's different than, how South Africa is or Namibia or what have you. So, um, Africa is coming along as a continent. There are two residence by investment programs. One is in Namibia, and it's really popular because Namibia used to be a German colony. And so this particular project are developments all around this really gorgeous golf course, and a lot of Germans have bought up that property. Um, take that for what it is. Um, and then the other one is Mauritius. Mauritius is a beautiful island. I believe Mauritius is on the eastern coast of Africa, I think, not too far from Mozambique, if I'm correct. Mauritius is a financial hub in the world. It is a beautiful island. I've not visited, but I've seen so many pictures and videos and everything. And that's a residence visa as well. Gorgeous. And I helped a client get a residence visa there a couple years ago, and she's from Richmond, Virginia, and she was relocating her and her family to Mauritius, and they're having a great time. I keep in contact with them; they love it. So,
Yeah, and I have some friends that go to Mauritius yearly.
mm,
And one of the other things too is when I spoke about understanding what language is being spoken, well, there are some parts in many countries in Africa, for example, where French is a language, right? So they speak French. So if you have some background and you speak French, okay, well, you might actually do well here, right? Because other countries, most people speak 2, 3 languages in those countries. So as you're doing some research, kind of think about that as well. Um, I wanted to just add that um, as you're looking at because Valerie, you guys don't really work with Africa too much with your company, right?
Not this, no, right, exactly. We're working on it, but not too much yet. We don't have anything to debut yet, but we're working on it.
Right. There are so many different companies out there that will say, "Hey, we can get you this, we can do that." You have to make sure you vet the companies.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to make sure you understand that this is the process. So as you start doing some research, and if you're looking to go there, you want to make sure that you're partnered up with somebody that knows. So I always say it's good to kind of have some resources, right? Local real estate agents that have been there, that are rooted there, that are born and raised there, or at least moved there, been there for a while. If you're interested, that's a great first point to start talking to somebody because
Mhm.
they normally are linked up with local attorneys, immigration attorneys, things like
Or
that, right? And so they
bankers,
can
yeah.
talk, yeah, they can help you with that process. Your guys are real estate agents. If you want me to connect you, I'm working on creating a database of agents that work at a high level in different parts of the world where we are referring a lot of business to and have potential clients look into. So if you ever are looking to, hey, I need an agent at this place, I would highly recommend you don't get an agent that's we have a lot of friends of ours that might have licenses in other countries, but if they don't live there, they really can't assist your clients that you want to refer that you want somebody that's rooted in the community, not just somebody that went and got their license since in Dominican or Mexico, right? And they go every so often. Like they're just not going to have that. One of the other things that you can also look at is ChatGPT is a great starting point just to get basic information about a country. Then you have to vet the information and make sure it's correct, right? But that gives you a starting point. You're like, oh, what about this place? Like, what is that? So if you just want to start there as well, expat forums and Facebook groups are very, very good. And in those Facebook groups, sometimes you have people that have already like moved there or whatever, and they might have some lawyers and things that they can refer to you. And then, of course, government immigration websites and for popular destinations are good as well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on
Something
touch.
really
Go
quickly
ahead.
too, when you were talking about local real estate agents, the other thing too is just making sure that those agents are really up to snuff. What we know with our American clients is that, and my firm is international. I'm one of two people that sit in the United States. Everybody else sits around the world, right? So I'm operating in different time zones all day long, even past midnight, because people are waking up in other parts of the world and we're doing business. But Americans are very, I always say it's called corporate America for a reason. It is baked in our culture. We can't get away from it. And we really don't know anything different until we do. And I've noticed working at two international firms that the rest of the world does not operate the way that we do. But what ends up happening is that Americans are used to how we operate. And so if you don't have a connection that operates, that is responsive on emails, that gives very thorough and complete information, all of those things make a difference because Americans are quick to think, oh, they don't want my business. If they're not going to respond to my email in a timely fashion, if they're not going to call me back, if they're not going to be thorough in the information that they give me, right? Americans will take their business somewhere else. So really, because I've had to have this conversation with certain members, of staff, not at this firm, but at another firm that I was at, because they just operate a little bit differently. You know what I mean? They're not as, I guess, tightly wound as we are in America, but they'll lose that American business, right? Because Americans just don't have time. I wanted to mention another one too. UAE is also a very good option. Residence visas only in the UAE. They do not grant citizenships, period. If you get a citizenship, it's because they have decided that you are worthy. So I do believe the rumor is like Steve Harvey has one, but he's brought a lot of business to the UAE. But they don't give citizenships to foreigners. The best you can get is a residence visa, but that's fine. And I believe UAE is 350 to 500,000. And if you're a business person, you could tack on your business associates at your C-suite associates onto that same application so that you can continue your business in the UAE without any issues. So UAE is another good option. My fault for not mentioning that to you, Natalie. And another correction, Egypt is the one and only country on the continent that offers citizenship by investment. Egypt. Namibia and Mauritius offer residence by investment. The rest of the continent is offering their own programs in different ways.